Surrounded by violence and struggle from an early age, Luke's childhood memories are riddled with pain and darkness. Sexually abused at the age of 5 and again at 14, confusion and fear became primary emotions as his life quickly spiraled in the fight for survival. Despite having his mother's enduring love, Luke seemed destined for incarceration or early death when everything changed. Becoming a Christian at the age of 18, Luke's path took a miraculous turn as he found purpose through religion and social work.
And in that moment, it was like God was like, I love you, you're my son. I just felt like he hugged me and he was like the father that I needed. He was the perfect father that I needed. I just remember just bawling my eyes out.
Today, he's the founder of Paylos Adventures, a mentoring business taking young people who've suffered hardship on life-changing adventures. This is Luke Wilson's story. Welcome to Young Blood, the volunteer video podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. I'm your host, Cal McPherson, and this is a platform for young men and their loved ones to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the #1 killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself. Luke, can you start by describing the home that you grew up in?
Yeah, so we grew up in a housing commission. So I remember at the time, I guess where I remember my memory kicking in, around about 4, we moved to Dandenong. So housing commission, and I'm pretty sure it was like a result of like a family violence program. I know my mum was like fleeing family violence. So it's me and my young brother in housing commission in Dandenong. Yeah, I think my mum was struggling with her mental health and just, I guess, the complexity of that. And
what do you remember from those early years?
So across the road, I made some friends with this Cambodian family. They were refugees from the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot and all that kind of stuff. So they fled that. And so their parents weren't doing too great and kind of dealing with their stuff. And I guess mum was like dealing with her stuff. And so the neighborhood kids that I connected with, it was a lot of fun at the time. But I remember kind of learning about how, I guess, unsafe a lot of those situations were, but not really realizing at the time, I guess, how unsafe they were.
Because it was normalized.
Exactly. And I think, in that situation, we were, a lot of my neighbors' parents were using smuggling drugs, and they were very often at like Crown and stuff like that. And so we would often have the house to ourselves, and my mum assumed that I was kind of at the neighbor's house. And so a lot of our childhood was me and my Cambodian friends that were just almost like Lord of the Flies. Like we're just kids kind of on the island, kind of surviving.
No supervision.
Yeah. And so like in that time there was, we started doing like burglaries into houses. We're like robbing like our milk bar. We're like finding other neighbors that we could kind of steal some stuff off and then sell stuff.
Did you know your dad?
No. So that's an interesting story. The man that I thought was my dad was my dad. So I was raised by one dad. And then when I was 7 years old, my mum bumped into my biological father and said to me, "This man's not your dad. This man's your dad." I guess the significance of that was that we didn't get arrested, but we had police involvement from one of the burglaries that we were doing. And the reason that's significant is because we just broke into somebody's house and stole their PlayStation, and then the police found out. And then not long after that, I remember learning about my father and the way that
when you were 7.
When I was 7. And so the way that I kind of made sense of that in my head was I was getting in trouble. I did something naughty and my dad rocked up, and I thought that my mum was kind of tapping out. Like, I can't do this anymore. He's too much for me. And I guess the reason that was significant was I really didn't want to lose my mum. At the time, I thought my dad knew about me and didn't want me. And then I remember thinking, I'm too much for my dad, too much for my mum. And not that she doesn't want me, but there was a sense of like potential rejection there, like kind of like.
She's going to give you away.
Yeah, because it was getting a bit much. Because my mum was, I guess, struggling with her mental health. She's on a disability pension for OCD and that kind of stuff, and so she was really struggling. Plus the family violence, so it was a really complex situation. and me and my younger brother, two hyperactive kids in housing conditions on the streets of Dandenong, getting in trouble with police. It was a lot, right? And so my dad rocks up. My mum said I can go live with him, and my immediate reaction was like, "Oh no! Like I'll be good. We can work this out." And what was interesting is that being good meant not being caught. So I remember thinking like, I've just got to be clever at this. I've just got to find a way to not let the police kind of find out and that kind of stuff. And then so me and my Cambodian friends, I was like, bro, we can't get caught again. We can't do this. I don't want to go live with my dad. Like, we got to kind of make it. And I remember that kind of, when I kind of got turned on for money, I was like, oh, we need to like find ways to get clever at making money and that kind of stuff. Because the parents of the kids that I was hanging out with, they were very often absent. They were at Crown like 2-3 weeks on end, and they'll leave us either $20 or they'll leave us like a pot of food. And so we would have to kind of band together to get some food and get creative, go down the milk bar, buy a box of Megarang, make that kind of work with us, and on our push bikes and
stretch.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. And so then we got done. We didn't get done because we're too young, right? We're too young, but like we got caught doing that, and so I was like, man, how do we not get caught? I don't want to go live with my dad. I want to make this work, and I was really, obviously really attached to my mom and really wanted to make that work.
What about finding out that the person that you were told was your dad wasn't your dad?
Dude, that's, I guess, been the craziest ride. I remember at the time, I was really close to my younger brother, Tony, and I remember at the time, the only thing I was really worried about was whether he was still technically my brother. I remember that was the only thing that ran through my mind. I was quite grateful to him. I wasn't fully aware of the family violence element that was involved. I think my mum sheltered me a lot from that. So in my mind, it was like, so I still call him daddy, but in my mind, it was like, oh, daddy misses us. Daddy wants to spend time with us. Why can't we hang with daddy? And my mum doesn't want to tell me the full extent of what was going on.
And are you talking about your biological dad?
No, my stepfather. Yeah. And so I was like, I want to hang out with daddy. I miss daddy and stuff. So because I wasn't fully aware of that element there. And then when I found out he wasn't my biological father, there was still a deep level of gratitude of like, oh, but you stepped up when my dad didn't.
And he's a decent bloke.
It's complex. It's complex. I mean, I've learned that he's got his own trauma from his own upbringing, that kind of stuff, and he has his strengths, and he has some things that are difficult.
Is he still in your life now?
Yeah. So he's still in my life. He some stuff that he does really well in terms of how much he loves me, my brother, and my mum, and his commitment to us. He definitely has mental health issues because of his trauma and that kind of stuff, and so I do find that quite difficult at times. It's definitely a difficult relationship in the sense that I deeply love him, and I guess the story's messy, right? So there's so many layers to it, and I guess my life and my relationship with him has gone through phases. So at the time, deeply in love and appreciative of what he did and that kind of stuff, and then learned kind of stuff later on in my life that, when I learned about the family violence and that kind of stuff, it made me really angry, and I had so many mixed feelings of like, I'm grateful for this.
So was your mum playing your biological dad or your stepdad? So
both,
right?
Which was crazy, right? So my mum was with my dad, my biological father, and left him. Met in Melbourne, Australia. Left him, went to South America, and she did some foreign aid work and that kind of stuff. And then found out she was pregnant with me. Met my stepfather in Mexico. Got married, had me. Came back to Australia, then had my brother, and then around about 4 years old, separated, and then around about 7, she bumped into my biological father that she hadn't really had contact with since I was conceived, kind of thing. And so, it was, I guess, a very kind of broken and complex kind of tricky situation. So both of them were for family violence and family violence reasons. My mum had to leave my dad, and then my mum had to leave my stepfather, and then they kind of came in the picture at different times.
And how aware of the violence were you at that age, like that your mum was in danger or that she'd been hurt by these men?
It's really weird because I remember it, but I wasn't really aware of it at the time, because now as an adult, I've kind of spent some time, reflecting and that kind of stuff, and I remembered stuff that I found quite difficult. So I obviously, witnessed it, but
suppressed it.
Definitely suppressed it. And I think because it was suppressed, it then allowed me for certain periods of my life to have quite positive relationships with them. Or with my stepfather, I got to have I definitely found him difficult at the time. I definitely found him difficult at the time and complex, but there was elements that I really loved about him and had.
And because you were compartmentalizing, you were able to still have parts of that relationship and just not addressing the other parts. And also you're too young to make sense of it as well. And that's a coping mechanism to be able to survive when you're when you're being exposed to stuff that you shouldn't be exposed to. As much as you're comfortable with, can you talk about the abuse you endured when you were 5?
Yeah. So that was quite a messed up situation. So the older guys that I hung out with, the older guys that I hung out with, because I would have been maybe 5 or 6. Some of my friends would have been around 4, 5, and 6, but some of the older boys would have been like 9, 10, 11, 12, and I guess they came across porn, obviously at an extremely young age, and then they were trying to introduce us to porn. And so, to understand the context a little bit, one of the things that they made us do was they would make us fight each other when they were bored. So my mum was quite a pacifist, and we weren't allowed to watch Power Rangers because that was too violent, or Ninja Turtles, that was too violent. And when they were bored, they'd make us kind of fight until somebody bled, which was terrifying for any child. But
because there was no parents around.
No, they were just bored. Like, we're like pit bulls, like you guys, but like you as you. And I'm not some kind of tough guy. I'm not trying to say I was some kind of green shirt hooligan or anything like that. I grew up in a home where we weren't allowed to watch Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles because that was too violent. And so I'm thrown into this really scary situation.
Yeah, you were surrounded by violence.
Yeah, they're like, you got to fight him. I'm like, no, I love him. He's my best friend. And I'm just terrified of getting bashed by them. And so.
And that was a threat, like from the threat of physical violence from your friends was there.
Yeah, and so that's how they and so pretty much what I've kind of learned later on is that they're learning about the adult world without supervision. You know, this says like parental guidance, no parental guidance, right? They're watching porn and violence, and we're watching like Menace to Society and Blood In, Blood Out at like, 5, 6, 7. They're watching it like 9, 10, 11, 12.
And then
making us out. Yeah, and so that's kind of where the abuse came in. So in the same way that they made us fight each other, they forced me and this little girl, like one of their cousins, to have sex and kind of imitate a porn film.
As a 5-year-old?
Yeah, about 5 or 6. I can't remember the exact age. I remember being really scared. I remember feeling really weird. I remember, like my genitals hurting, and I remember like being really, really scared. And I remember like the older boys, like one of them had like a camcorder because he was trying to copy and trying to make a porn film. And I don't even think this thing worked. Like, I might even know how to use batteries, but they were just kind of like imitating that. And it was just whatever we saw on TV, we kind of played those games. So that was just something they were watching, and we were just the puppets that kind of had to play those roles, kind of thing.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
So awful.
Yeah.
What was your understanding of all that at the time? Was it similar to seeing the violence with your parents, where you were just trying to compartmentalize it and put it out of your mind as like as a coping mechanism to survive? Or how did you rationalize what was happening in your mind at that time, if you remember?
I remember it being naughty. I remember feeling like shame and embarrassment. I remember feeling like this can't be right, kind of thing. But because it was like we just play different pretend games all the time, like, because it went from acting out Rush Hour, like Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker doing a mission together. Then it went from like acting out like Vatos Locos and Blood In, Blood Out and that kind of stuff. And it went from acting out that to Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood. It went from that to then, acting out a porn film, which was kind of like, it was the movie of the day that we were copying or something. And I think I knew that one was a bit wrong. In most of the games we played, I was quite scared because the older boys were quite scary, and you didn't want to get hurt by them. You didn't want to get bashed by them. You didn't want to. But I think what was really important is you didn't want to not have their approval. And when you're like a young man hungry for your dad's approval, both dads are absent, and you're looking for that male affirmation, there's a strong element there of the male affirmation. There's a strong element of like, I don't want to get bashed. And it's like, also like, what am I doing for today? This is what my friends are doing. This is the game that we're playing. And so sometimes it was fun when we played Lord of the Rings and Rush Hour. And then sometimes a little bit scary when we played Menace to Society or Boys in the Hood, because I knew I was getting bashed that day. And then sometimes it was really yucky because it was.
Did you have an awareness that that was sexual abuse?
Nah, I think I just knew it was kind of naughty. I knew that there was always some kind of shame elements kind of associated with that. I knew that I didn't want anyone else outside of that circle kind of knowing. But I think it was kind of diluted by it was just another game we were playing kind of thing. And so it was probably wasn't the greatest game to play, but it was just, I think I wouldn't have identified it as sexual abuse at the time. I would have identified it as that's a game that I don't really like. And then obviously later on with my work in like child protection and that kind of stuff, I was like, oh, that's messed up kind of thing, you know? So that kind of came out later as I started to kind of linking with positive mentors and role models, and I got to start to kind of unpack some things and I guess the study that I was doing and that kind of stuff.
What were the primary emotions that you were carrying around back then? How did you feel in yourself?
I definitely remember having a very low kind of view of myself. Yeah, I definitely had a very low view of myself. I was worried that I was too much for my mum. I think I was very protective of my mum, and I was very kind of like worried for my mum that things weren't going to get too bad for her. I knew. I remember having an awareness at about 9 or 10 that mum was suicidal, and I just had this fear in the back of my mind that I would come home and I'd find my mum's cold body, like she committed suicide. I remember there'll be some times where I couldn't find my mum, and then she just kind of went to the back park. So there'd be like, so where we lived in Jesson Crescent, there was like a creek, and there was like a playground over our back fence, and I just remember like maybe like 2 o'clock, well, yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning, I might find my mum kind of on a park bench out in the middle of the park, just in the middle of nowhere, like in this giant kind of park. She's like sitting on the park bench, curled up in the fetal position, just crying, saying that she hates her life, that she wishes that she wasn't born, and that she's just so angry at that.
And she was traumatized, obviously, from what she'd been through.
She was really struggling with her OCD. It was quite crippling for her, and I remember her kind of crying, like, why did this happen to me, kind of stuff. And I remember being very young and having this awareness, like not really knowing what suicide was, but having this awareness that mum might give up one day and that kind of stuff. And I just needed her so bad because, like broken relationships with my dad, obviously that connection, you know, she was my primary attachment. And so knowing that she can't bear her life, and then knowing that I'm such a screw up and I'm so much trouble and I'm such a mess, it's like there was this fear that one day I'm going to be the final straw, that it's just going to be too much to kind of for her, and that I will, because I've come home, can't find my mum, so I've been out that day, like, you know, doing drugs, breaking into a house, doing something silly with my mates on the streets, and then I'll come home, can't find my mum.
And that panic.
There's that panic, like tonight's the night, can't find anybody, that kind of stuff, looking for everywhere, and then I'll find her at the back park, just crying, being like, I can't do this anymore, I hate my life, and that kind of stuff. And then I'm just like, cuddle my mum, cry, and just like beg her, like, please, we can do this kind of stuff. And so that's why when the police came, from the time we got caught doing the burglary, it was this panic of like, I've done it, this is what's gonna, you know. And so when my dad came involved after that, I thought that was my mum tapping out, and I was just so desperate to like, oh please mum, like we can do this, I promise, like I'll be good.
What kind of love did you feel towards your mum? Like,
just out of this world, like just the most perfect thing in the world. Like there was nothing more perfect, more pure than my mum's love. Like she was the only pure thing that I knew. Yeah. Oh, her and her mum, so my grandmother, like those two were just the most pure things of love. Like she was the most gentle, loving soul. Oh, she is. I'm talking like she's gone. She's the most gentle, loving soul. Like, like if anyone's like angry or aggressive, that kind of stuff, she would just sit with anyone. Like she made friends with people who were homeless. She made friends with people who had disabilities or mental illness and that kind of stuff, or intellectual disabilities. Like she just, oh man, she was like more than like a Mother Teresa. She just loved it. You could just never kind of see her angry. She was just she had such a beautiful form of love. And it was honestly a lifeline. It was honestly a lifeline in the ocean of pain and confusion of my childhood. It's like, I just
So you're desperately clutching onto that.
Yeah, it was just the most pure thing
that
ever.
was all you had.
Yeah.
But it was roped in with all of this confusion around her not being okay and her.
But her not, and I want to make this very, very clear, her not being okay, and this is something that's kind of complex right now in my relationship with my mom today, is that I've got no anger, I've got no upset. And my mum feels really guilty. Like, we'll talk about it today, and she'll often kind of come to me crying because she'll remember something from our childhood and be like, I'm really sorry this happened to you. And I was like, my position has always consistently been, Mum, I don't feel like I missed out on anything. I don't feel like you needed to do anything differently. Like I've got nothing in my heart that says that you didn't do enough. Like in my, like her struggling with her mental health never for a second took away from the source of love that she was for me. So like,
it didn't stop her doing her best to be there
her
for
being
you,
my safety anchor that I could always kind of like hover around, like I never felt that was ever lacking for a second. I never felt like there wasn't this overwhelming fountain of love from my mum that I could always access no matter what I was doing that day. Like no matter if I was doing drugs or whatever horrible stuff in the sexual abuse or whatever kind of thing, I knew that I had this safety anchor that I could come back to every single time of like, this is such a pure thing that I could tap in with. And then her kind of struggling with her mental health and being suicidal and that kind of stuff never took away, like that never limited the source of love that I had access to. It was just kind of like, I was scared of what that was doing for her because I was like, Mum, I need you to not tap out because I don't know where I can find this from if it's not from you. And
it put a responsibility on you of, I've got to be the one to look after Mum to make sure that she stays here.
Yeah, so whatever the kind of negative voices are in her head that are kind of tipping her towards that edge, if I can address those negative voices to preserve that light that she is for me, and then I'm going to be able to keep going because I can't do that without that anchor.
And you were separating the two because you knew the real her, the one that you loved and cared about, you knew who she was, and then you separated the voices she was hearing and like the darkness of that as like an enemy that you were both fighting rather than she was both things.
Yeah.
And getting into crime, you started doing burgs, as you said, when you were 7, which is crazy young to be breaking into houses. But as you said, I mean, it does kind of make sense when you're talking about watching those movies and just trying to act out stuff that you saw on TV without really having the understanding of it, and then being egged on by an older group of, well, you called them friends, but just people who were around. And obviously very impressionable at that time. I mean, you're pretty much a baby. You're just like a sponge.
Yeah.
How did that progress, and like what kind of trouble did you get in?
I think it was around about 12 that I think the weed started. And then I think that went over to like speed and stuff like that. But I remember that was just kind of the group. That's who we hung out with. So that just kind of continued. We just, I don't know, like, just little street kids, station rat kind of like, we're just bumming around, bumming cigarettes, like catch a train to the city.
Are you going to school?
Yeah, going to school. Yeah, going to school. But then, we'll like catch a train to the city at nighttime. We'll spend the weekends out, like, quite young. I don't know. Yeah, go to the city and just do something, or hang around Dandenong Station, or go to there's like a internet cafe and go there and play games and stuff like that. Just kind of bumming around the streets. Kind of up to no good. I could definitely see that kind of getting worse. So there was drug use and just breaking into houses, trying to steal things. And then parties started to come in, and then girls started to come in, and that kind of stuff. So that's how that went. Yeah, there was the violence that we were seeing. And there was a mixture of some really happy memories and there's some mixture of some like not so great ones, but it all kind of blended together. That was just kind of like our little group, and that's kind of what we did, and that's kind of where we were heading. And nothing was really going to kind of change that trajectory, I guess. Yeah.
And were you self-medicating? Did it feel like self-medicating with the drugs, or you didn't see it that way?
Nah, I don't think it was self-medicating. To be honest, I think it was just. It was cool. Like I think it was just like, bro, I'm smoking weed. Like the dudes like on Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society. It was like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. It was like, it was really just being impressionable.
That's what you do.
Yeah, it was just being impressionable, like riding like a BMX, but saying it's my low rider and stuff like that. It was just like we were just really impressionable, and that was just our culture.
And you wanted to emulate being little gangsters
for sure. Yeah, it was just the coolest, funnest thing. I think the medicating and that kind of stuff, I think that started to manifest around about the 14 to 16 mark. I think that's when it started to be a cause. But I think prior to that, we were still just kind of playing make-believe, but it wasn't make-believe. But we're kind of playing make-believe, but it wasn't. It was very much real.
Did the crimes ever step up, like turn into robberies and that sort of thing, or didn't go that far?
Nah, it didn't go that far. I wasn't that tough or that kind of intimidating. It was more just kind of like quickly break into a house, steal some stuff, and then sell it. I didn't have that kind of element to it. But yeah, I mean, it did escalate to like break into like factories and schools and stuff like that. Like it went from houses to then, we can get bigger ticket items from like factories and schools and stuff like that. So that there was a bit of escalation, but it wasn't like
and you didn't end up in juvie?
No. I think we nearly ended up with child protection. The family that I was hanging out with, they were importing heroin and that kind of stuff, and I think the Australian Federal Police or something like that did a raid. It was like the equivalent. I don't know what's the Australian equivalent of like SWAT. I don't know, but I remember they kind of busted through the doors to kind of find them, and then we were there because the parents were there, and they called child protection to come and take the kids away. And I think my mum was walking. I think my mum just went for a walk. I just kind of saw that as we were about to like hop into the child protection car, and then she was like, "Oh no, there's my kids," and she saved us from that. So I remember that kind of happening. That kind of saved it. But then my friends had to go away for a few weeks, but then they got to come back home. So I do vaguely remember that. But yeah, no, I don't have a criminal record, which is cool. Yeah, working with children.
So you got away with a few.
Yeah,
back then. Or you got caught, but you were so young. And
when I got caught, I was too young for anything to happen, and then when I got older, when something could have happened, I was lucky enough to not get caught. And then,
how did you feel about doing stuff you knew was wrong? Like, was your morals and integrity, was there some there? And you felt
it was the coolest thing. It was just cool. It was because the cool guys in the movies did it. We were just there wasn't really. We might have known that someone would have been angry if we got caught, but it wasn't at all. Yeah, there was no conflict there. It was yeah.
And then when you were 14, you got abused again.
Yeah.
Were drugs involved in that? What was the situation with that?
That was a completely different situation. We're at like a party with a family friend, and we stayed over, and then like I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was some guy that was like hugging me with like his hand down my pants and stuff like that, and it happened in the middle of the night, and I never met the guy before, and that was really, really, really yuck. And
did you fight him off, or did you freeze?
Nah, I remember I was completely frozen. I remember I was asleep. It felt like a dream, and then even when I started to wake up, I remember how like kind of scared I was, and I remember, I just remember being paralyzed in fear, and then just not being able to move, not being able to speak, not being able to do anything. It's almost like, I don't know, when you have those nightmares where
sleep paralysis,
you can't move, and something's trying to get you. Like that's what it felt like. I just could not move, could not do anything. And you're just almost like crying on the inside, just like begging for it to stop. And then I don't know, it might have gone on for like 5-10 minutes, but it felt like 20 hours. I felt like a lifetime. Waking up the next day and then like not knowing what to do. And then I think it took me like a day or two to kind of gather myself and realize what happened. And then, then we ended up then I ended up telling my mum and found out the exact same thing happened to my brother the exact same night, because I was in one room, my brother was in another room. And
Same person?
Same person, yeah. And so we ended up going to the police and that kind of stuff. But I remember that being really terrifying. It was so weird. It was like, although that I was really like violated and all that kind of stuff, I wasn't angry until I found out it happened to my little brother, I think. Cause yeah, everyone like to say, oh man, if that happened to me, I'd bash the guy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I'm just being honest, bro, that didn't go through my mind. Like I would love to be able to say, oh man, I just freaking got angry and I stabbed him or I bashed it. Like it sounded really cool and tough, but I was just like a deer in headlights, just frozen, just couldn't. But then when I found out it happened to my little brother, then it was like, then that's when all those like tough guy emotions came out. I'm like, oh bro, I'm gonna put holes in this guy, I'm gonna bash him. And that they genuinely came out. They genuinely had aggression and anger. But for some reason, I don't know how to explain it, but for some reason, when it happened to me, it was like, I was just kind of like paralyzed. I was free. It was almost like, it was a very, very negative out-of-body experience.
Sounds like you had a level of detachment with yourself.
Yeah, for quite a long time.
From everything that you've been through, all the trauma you've been through, you sort of learn to detach a bit from your own experience. But then when it's your brother, it's a different story.
I remember not having any kind of sexual urges or any kind of attraction to any women, because obviously I was a young male, so I was just like, constantly looking for girls my age and that kind of stuff. And I remember, it was like a good 6 months. I just didn't feel anything. I don't know, I was terrified. I was like, I just lost this drive. I don't know. It's just really weird. It took me a long time to kind of recover from that, I guess. And you're definitely not in a friend circle where you can talk about that kind of stuff. Like, you're definitely not in a friend circle where you can kind of open up and just kind of say, I'm struggling with this, or this happened to me.
You think they would have just made fun of you?
There is no, like, bro,
or they would have hurt you?
Nah, it wouldn't have been that. Like, it was so weird. You never got hurt. Like, every time we got hurt, they never stopped loving you. Like, it was never that you weren't part of their group or part of their gang or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, it was never like I was not part of that clique. I was always 100% their family, and they were my family, regardless of how twisted that upbringing was. There was this genuine connection of a really distorted map of love.
But you couldn't actually be real with them about stuff.
Nah, there's no way, because you couldn't even. I remember, it was so funny. I remember I was talking to someone the other day. I only started wearing sunnies, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, as like a fully grown adult. And I remembered why that at like 6 or 7 or 8, anytime you tried to look cool, you put your hat backwards, and like my mates were like, oh, you think it's so cool? That's the way we kind of tease each other. And the last thing you wanted to do is to look like you were trying hard and stuff. So if you wore sunnies, you got teased and that kind of stuff. You had to act like you didn't care. It was just this weird kind of culture within our little clique. And so if I can't even pull off sunnies without, like, I'm trying too hard and these guys are going to tease me for like kind of trying too hard, there is no way I can open up and say something embarrassing happened to me. Because I can't even do anything like act too cool or something like that, because
they're just going to call you gay or whatever.
Exactly. But then I would have done the same thing to them. Not because I thought that was right, but that was the way that we communicated. It was like, if I got a, like, you couldn't even get a new bike. Because if I got a new bike, then they would tease me. But then if they got a new bike, like, oh, you think you're so cool with your new bike? Oh, it's gay or whatever. It was just this weird kind of thing. And you never wanted to be.
But everyone's just got their wall right up, right? Because they're surrounded by.
Yeah, so you all had to be not trying too hard. So you all got to be kind of like not trying too hard and that stuff. So you all had to kind of do that. So you didn't want to be the one that tried to show off. That was the thing. It was showing off. If you tried to show off, you got teased. Like, look at this guy.
But also, if you showed emotion, or if you showed that you were in some way penetrable and you had feelings, or you had that vulnerability, then they would have, rather than be a real friend where they could actually obviously they could relate to you. They were going through all kinds of shit as well, but the culture wasn't as such that there was any room to actually support each other and actually be friends. It was just like this fucked up association of damaged kids who didn't know how to process what was happening around them.
And no one wants to be the one that breaks the ice. No one wants to be the first one that says, hey, bro, I care and I'll sit with you through the thing. Because that's what we all needed and we all wanted, but no one wants to be the first one to say that. So
because you were also worried that you were just going to get paid out or isolated.
You don't want to be the one that's going to get paid out. You don't want to put your hand up and say, I've got feelings. You're like, there's a loser over here with feelings. Bang, everyone's on. You know what I mean? So that was the culture. So there wasn't a safe space to kind of deal with that. Yeah.
Did you have that with your mum? Could you talk to her about feelings and about that assault particularly? Emotionally, could she hold that space for you?
My mum's like the most naturally therapeutic person in terms of like talking about your feelings and stuff. It wasn't that I didn't want to tell my mum. I was like, I just there'd be certain times I didn't want to stress my mum, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I knew that she would just be the most amazing listener to kind of talk about stuff. But I didn't want to kind of stress her out and think, oh, things are getting difficult. I need you to worry, kind of things. I didn't want her to worry.
And that goes back to you in the back of your mind being concerned for her and what she was able to cope with, and not wanting to add to her stress or become a reason for her to fall in a heap. So although you knew you could go to her to talk, you felt that pressure, as I think lots of men do, particularly, where it's like, oh, I can't be someone who's struggling. I have to be the rock for my mum because she's already going through all this, and I don't want to add to that.
Yeah.
Even though she would have been
she would have been amazing to.
So going through that assault, that's a horrendously traumatic thing to experience, and your brother as well. You say it shut you down sexually afterwards. Obviously a symptom of it. How did that impact the way that you viewed yourself as a man, and what kind of shame was attached to it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it definitely made me worry about whether I'm tough enough, whether I'm strong enough, whether I'm brave enough, whether I'm man enough. I think the whole time the consistent theme is like, am I man enough? And that's what we're really needing. And that's what we're really kind of striving for. And prior to that, that was always an insecurity. Am I man enough? Am I tough enough? Am I strong enough? Because that's what you needed to be. You need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, and you need to be able to punch on if anyone kind of challenges you and that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, that terrified the crap out of me. I'm like, I didn't grow up as a fighter. I grew up in a pacifist home.
Did it feel emasculating?
Yeah, for sure. So it's like I was already insecure about my masculinity already terrified to fight my friends, and I was getting bashed regularly. And it's like, and now this happened. It's like, it's just, I didn't have much left in my fragile masculinity before that hit. I definitely don't have it afterwards. And so it was just continue kind of hits to like, it's kind of second guessing like my view and understanding of masculinity. I was so far from it, because what I thought you had to do to be a tough, strong, respectable man, well, I just been, someone just touched my penis. I got bashed the other day, and this happened, and I got jumped at the station the other day, and this happened. It was all these points against how I'm not man enough. Do you know what I mean?
So that all added up to you just taking away that you were weak.
Too weak. Sure, 100%, right? But once again, fitting in that circle, can't let anyone know how weak that I think I am. I have to really kind of
pretend
that I've got a couple more points in my masculinity basket that I don't actually believe that I have. To my version at the time of what I thought masculinity was, I was like, I was so far from that mark, but I can't let them know how far I'm from the mark. And it's definitely that whole case of you got to fake it till you make it. So you've got to kind of let them know, yeah, bro, bash that guy. Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%. You're shitting yourself.
He didn't mean any of it.
No, he's like, nah.
You're just terrified.
Right. But you needed to kind of, what do they say now? Stand on business. Like you needed to do that and knowing that you
make a show of it. Yeah.
Because you couldn't
show any weakness. Otherwise, it would just, in that environment, it would just make it worse.
Yeah. So that was just another hit towards, see, you're not tough enough. See, you're not strong enough. See, you're not man enough. And I really didn't think I was man enough before, but I definitely don't feel like I'm man enough now, kind of thing. So it had a massive impact on my internal working model, which is like the view that you have of yourself over there. Yeah, whether you think you're of value or not. Yeah.
I'm so sorry that happened to you, man, and that you didn't have what you needed around you to even be able to start to process it or to have any compassion. And also you've been conditioned to not even have that for yourself. And not like, oh, I just got abused. I'm a survivor of a serious crime, but a sicko.
Yeah.
Your thought process was, I'm a pussy.
Yeah, that's that. 100%. You don't walk away like, exactly. You don't have the thought of like, I was a victim of a crime. I need therapy, blah, blah. You're like, fuck, I lost that. There's another loss against my name.
Yeah, I did nothing.
Yeah, I bitched out. There's another time that I bitched out when I should have stood on business and done something. But I'm 14, bro, and this guy's like 35 years old, fully grown man. But you don't at the time make sense of that going, bro, if you're 14, he's 35.
You've been conditioned to blame yourself.
So you blame yourself
everything
being like,
on you.
You bitched out. And that was the thing. But that's what my friends would have said to me. But that's what I would have said to my friends. That was the culture. That was the understanding. That's the way you knew the world to work. It's like, doesn't matter if you're 14, you bitched out. That's it. You bitched out. So you don't allow yourself a period to grieve. You blame yourself for the fact that you lost. Bro, go away, get better, get stronger, do some push-ups or something.
Like it's some resilience.
Because you can't, yeah.
Like it's some resilience exercise.
Yeah, like,
failed.
bro, you lost your soccer game? Oh, bro, go do some more laps, get better at soccer so you can win your next game.
Like that's it's comparable to that.
Yeah,
you know?
That's kind of what my mentality was. Yeah.
But you've just been conditioned to function that way because you'd shouldered so much responsibility for yourself and just been living with this fear of, well, I've got to be the one to protect myself and stand up. And if anything happens to me, that's my fault because this is a dark and dangerous world and there's threats all around and you can't do anything about that. And, you know, if something happens to you, then that's your fault. That's on you. You should have avoided that, you know, and just that level of pressure that you're innately putting on yourself without even realizing that no kid should be getting around with that kind of a damaged mentality. And just really deeply sad that you had to grow up that way. I mean, thankfully you at least had somewhere to go emotionally in having your mum there. But man, like, just carrying that around, like one, having the traumas happen to you regularly and then stuff that was traumatic that you wouldn't have even seen that way at the time. You might have even have laughed at it and then on reflection years later been like, that even some of the things I thought were good were fucked up. But not just the traumas themselves, but also the mindset that you tormented yourself with, like you had a choice, but you know that was your fault that this shit happened.
I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't tough enough. And had I been stronger, had I've like, I don't know. Let's say I, because obviously when the older guys like get you to fight and punch on because they're bored, you bitch out there. You're too scared to think, and then they force you to do it, right? But it's kind of like, then the thought is like, what if I didn't bitch out? What if for the last 3 years I punched on with everyone, said yes to everyone? Would I have then been strong enough to have beat this guy when that happened? Do you know what I mean? So then you blame on yourself for like, oh, it's because I didn't prepare myself. I wasn't tough enough or whatever. And I didn't.
And all based off of this
distorted
nonsensical model of what you're supposed to be, that even if you had become the biggest and the toughest and the most brutal and the one who everyone respected because they could win the fight, you're so far away from understanding that people who are using violence to get what they want and are out of control are the furthest thing from being secure and self-confident and what you actually want to be.
Definitely. Yeah.
So you're aiming for this model of masculinity that is never going to serve you.
Distorted.
One, it's not attainable for someone who's obviously a gentle-natured kind of person anyway.
Yeah.
And even if you achieved it, it would not serve you in any way and it would just be super damaging for your life regardless. Yeah. And there's all these young kids just copying what they've seen in these negative influences, and they're all aspiring for this image to be that guy, but none of them actually are, and none of them actually know. None of you know what to model yourselves on, and so you're all talking the talk and putting on a show of like, yeah, I'm a tough guy, but you're all just scared.
Yeah.
Scared little
Yeah.
boys,
100%. 100%. Nailed it, bro.
Yeah. You were in a pretty clear downward spiral for your whole life where pretty good bet. Dead or in jail.
For sure.
Fairly soon.
Definitely.
But that didn't happen. So how were you able to turn out of that? What happened that changed your course?
I think the consistent theme here is I think there's 2 points here. There's the masculinity, and then there's the value and the self-worth, right? And so when I was 12, there was this Christian organization called Temcare, and they donated money to send me and my younger brother on these holiday camps, these Christian holiday camps. And then the Christian holiday camps offered to pay half of the half. And so my mom, I think she had to pay $50 or something. And we were there for a whole week of like food and activities. Anyway, we're not a Christian family. We grew up in an atheist family. And so I can't tell you how annoying it is when you're breaking into houses, smoking weed and hooking up with girls, that your mum books you on a Christian camp. And I'm just like, bro.
This does not fit my gangster image, Mom.
I can't tell you. I was like...
And you couldn't tell your boys about that.
No, there was no way. I'm like, I got this really cute girl that I know I'm going to go see. And, you know, and like, we got this weed to smoke, got this school holidays coming up. It's like, this is this.
It was a contrast to what you were
and so my
for.
mum tricked me. I remember she didn't tell me the Christian part at the beginning. I remember she saying something like, you're going to go on this camp. Like, well, what kind of camp? She's like, you know, like in the movie. And I think she kind of described like the movie. And obviously, because we were living through movies, right? So me and my friends were like always watching movies. Like, you know, we would like watch like these movies where these kids would have like this whole breakfast spread and this kid would like sip some orange. Oh, Mom, I got to go. That kind of stuff. So I remember just watching the movies and going, I wish I could have that. And so it was like, yeah, you know those holiday camps those kids in America go to? I'm like, yeah, right. That's not too bad. And then like, I remember kind of as we're like putting the bags on the bus, she's like, yeah, it's like Christian camp. I was like, what? And I'm angry. I'm so dirty. I'm so angry. Fuck, dude, I'm fucking angry with like Rod and Todd Flanders and
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there like, I'm not gonna bash these kids. I'm not gonna bash them, Mark.
Just
so like wired up.
Your mentality.
Yeah.
So you had to prove that you were tough.
Yeah. Right? And I was like not at all interested in hanging out with Rod and Todd Flanders. I'm like, I'm gonna rob Rod and Todd Flanders. I'm not freaking hanging out with them. So anyway. So I'm sitting on the bus, we're driving to Phillip Island, and I'm just looking at these kids, and they're like singing songs. I'm like,
and you're sitting at the back, just mean mugging them, like.
Of course you're singing your silly little songs. Anyway, so then we get there, and it's about like 7 or 8 o'clock, and they put us to bed. And I'm like, of course you Christians, you got your bloody bedtimes and that kind of stuff, right? And you're just thinking, you know how cool I am? I don't even have a bedtime. I go to bed whenever I want. So just that kind of shit, yeah. Anyway. 10 o'clock at night, all the leaders come into our cabins and they wake us up. Look, what's going on? And they walk us down to Main Street Cows. And at the time there was this place that was like gaming arcade and laser tag. And we had unlimited gaming arcade and laser tag for like 2 hours or something. And it was like, what? You guys are Christians. You can't
have fun.
This is like a sin? Like you go, what time did Jesus say you need to go to bed, right? So it was like that, right? And so I was like, and I just thought, I was like, I couldn't believe it. And so now I'm playing laser tag and I'm playing like video games. And then like the next day they've got this like blow-up swimming pool full of spaghetti and jelly and Vegemite. And it's like, all right guys, messy games. You got to jump in there and you got to wrestle out and you got to get his sock and he's got to try to get your sock and that kind of stuff. And bro, this is like Nickelodeon. I was like, what? I see this on the movies. And then we're like singing camp songs and they're singing about like this great big moose and stinky socks and blah, blah. And it's like, there's unlimited food. And actually my mom was like a little bit of a hippie. So we never had to have MSG or preservatives. I'm like, there's so much sugar and preservatives and colorings. I'm just like drinking red cordial. I'm like, this is like where Richie Rich lives or something like that, right?
So you warmed to it pretty quickly.
Blown. I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever, right? So now I'm like, Mom, I want to go on these camps all the time. And there was like a tiny bit of Jesus. Like, so it was just kind of like, there was like 30 minutes, they did like a bit of a story and something. I was like, okay, cool, whatever, do your thing. Like, you guys are giving me ice cream and chocolate. I'll let you talk about
small
Jesus, whatever. Small price to pay, right? So now I'm going to these camps and I'm like going on flying foxes and I'm singing songs and that kind of stuff, right? And I go on every single camp every single school holidays.
What do your friends say? You're like, you're going on another one of those camps, and you're like, yeah, it's cool, it's cool.
No, what was cool, because what was so interesting about my friends was like, we loved everything was on TV, right? So it's like, we want to be Men in Black, and we also want to be Vatos Locos, and we also want to be Menace to Society, but we also want to be
Richie Rich,
right? So we want to, and so we watch Nickelodeon, and we watch Nickelodeon, like, bro, how cool is it? Like, oh, how lucky are these cool, rich American kids, whatever, they get to do this kind of. We never
get to do food and the games.
Yeah,
and then you would just say that you get to go do that.
So I'm like, bro, there's this place we get to go, and I get to do it, right? So I'm going to these camps, and the reason it was cool because it was something we saw on TV that we wished that we could do. There's this element where, because the bus would always pick us up from Dandenong Park and take us down to Phillip Island, and we go over the bridge, San Remo, and I remember, this is crazy, and I learned about it later when I did my studies in like trauma and stuff. But what was crazy was that when I crossed that bridge into Phillip Island, there was this weight that lifted off my shoulders, because I knew for these 5 days,
you were safe.
I was safe, like physically, emotionally, I was going to be fed. I was going to, I knew that my mum didn't have to worry, because I knew that my mum's biggest stress with her OCD was the complexity of 2 ADHD boys running the muck, right? So we were gone for 5 days. So my mum's going to get a really good rest. I'm going to wrestle around in a swimming pool full of spaghetti. I'm going to go on a flying fox. I'm going to eat freaking preservatives and sugar. I'm going to have the greatest time ever, right? And it was just the most beautiful, peaceful, blissful time for me, right? The sad part though is jumping back on that bus, driving back to Dandenong. Crap, it's going to get dangerous again. I'm going to get jumped by the springy boys, or my mate's going to make me punch on because they're bored and that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of happening, right? So that's going throughout my childhood. What's really important is I had access to positive role models, specifically male role models. And these guys were like the coolest guys to me. These were like dads that I needed and didn't have, and really, really, my soul, my heart was longing for a father figure. So there's these positive male role models that are just there being silly and that kind of stuff. And this is what's really important, I was saying before, they redefine masculinity for me, which was just insane. And so they start to, so just seeing them being funny, seeing them being silly and being proud of it, taking a risk. So that stuff that we're really too scared to kind of show off, whatever, they would just do that. They would just be silly and be confident in themselves. I can't explain how attractive as a quality that was for me as a young man, looking at these older guys being like, he's being silly, he's being dorky, or he's being funny, or whatever it is. And he's like comfortable in his own skin. It's like, I never knew that was possible, because to be comfortable in your own skin, you only have to do the cool things. But here's someone doing a little bit dorky, but he's just happy. He doesn't mind. He doesn't care what anyone thinks. So there's a few things like that really caught my attention, and how they started to redefine masculinity for me.
Well, what you saw is these guys aren't afraid.
Yeah, but they're not violent, and they weren't scary. And these are really cool, strong men that were like people that I could kind of aspire to, aspire worthy, that were like positive, and they weren't aggressive, and there wasn't any family violence element, there wasn't any kind of violence element. And then I remembered there was another kid like me. The CYC had a few kids that came on that were like, little Eshe station rats, whatever, right? So there's another kid that was like me, and I was like, we punched on or something like that. And I remember the leaders had to break up the fight, whatever. And I had to do my tough guy, if and smash him, bro. And they told me how not cool that was, how disappointed they were, how unimpressed they were. And what you got to understand, that prior to that, the most affirmation I got was when I stood up for myself, was when I punched on, or when I kind of stood on business, right? So the older guys in my group was like, oh, fuck yeah, Luke, yeah, you did it. Yeah, bro, you stood up to him, blah, blah, like, oh yeah, you lost the fight, but bro, you stood on your own, I'm proud of you, right? So the most affirmation I got was anytime I did that. So here's these guys that I really look up to. I've now, stuck up my chest and tried to punch on and threw a couple swings, whatever it was. And it's like not consciously, but subconsciously feeling like these guys are going to really love me. Like my cabin leaders or whatever, my mentors, they're going to really think Luke's cool. And stuff. And when they were disappointed, they were really sad. They thought that was a horrible way to deal with a problem, a horrible way to deal with a conflict. They said, man, these guys come here looking for love and acceptance and that kind of stuff, and you've made a horrible experience for him. I was like, oh, you're not proud of it? Like, that's not, and this had like a 180 view of like how to deal with problems, what they're going to be affirming, like what behaviors are they trying to affirm within me? And they weren't trying to affirm that. And it just shell shocked me on like, yeah, like internally, not being conscious of this, subconsciously being like, oh, that's not how I get you guys to pat me on the back and say that you're proud of me. And so what I learned in my time going to these camps of like what they praised and where I got my affirmation from, which I was hungry for, was any time that I turned the other cheek. Any time that I chose love and forgiveness over justice, of me being right, me going, it's all right, bro. I'm sorry that you felt that way, and kind of owning things. So as we started to go through these concepts, I started to literally rewrite.
They changed your whole model.
The whole model of masculinity, of like, oh man, this is how men are meant to deal with problems.
That was the first time that you saw and start to understand, oh, I don't have to be violent. I don't have to be that definition of masculinity that I've grown up believing that I have to be. And there's only one way.
Yeah.
And here you are, you found people that you respected and you wanted to be like.
Yeah.
And they weren't violent and they weren't threatening and they weren't afraid.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, how do I be like them, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. Because remember, like, I wasn't gunning for masculinity. So when I'm gunning for masculinity, I'm really gunning for the affirmation that's behind that, right? So it's like before, because my view of masculinity was to be tough, then if I ever was tough, then they would be like, oh, bro, Luke's this cunt. Oh, Luke did that. Oh, Luke, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, and that's what I was really going for.
Yeah.
And so
validation and respect.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So now I did my version of masculinity, didn't find that validation and respect from the people that I was really chasing that from, and going, it's not over there. Where is it? Where's the validation? And then I started to learn, oh, the validation and respect's over here, in terms of like not choosing violence, but choosing like another way to deal with conflict. And so just all these kind of rewriting it. So like, I was like, I just went where the affirmation was, and the affirmation was in this really positive and what I later learned to be a Jesus version of masculinity.
So there must have been a real clash at that point when you went back on the bus to Dandenong, and now you've seen this modeled and you've had that sort of thrown out, and they've said to you, actually, there's a different way of doing things, and you've started to get validation for being someone with integrity.
Yeah.
Right? But then you're back then you're back in the hood.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, I think I started to learn that on those camps, the toughest thing I could do would be to walk away from a fight and show somebody love and forgiveness. And like, if this guy was being rude to me, if I went and then gave him my ice cream, I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry you had a hard day. Or, I'm sorry that we had a conflict, bro. Have my ice cream. Like, that would be the toughest thing that I could do in those camps.
And when you were able to do that, what did that do for you?
Oh man, it was spiritual, dude. Like I really felt, and I didn't believe in God at the time, but I really started to feel tingly. And I later learned, I later learned, and I've come to the belief that that was God kind of working through me. And I was like, and he's just kind of like, man, that's my son. I'm so proud of you. That's the way we do life. That's the way we do love, right? So I just remember having tingly feelings with it. I remember it felt good. There was like a tingly feeling kind of when I chose love over violence and conflict, that kind of stuff. In mixed with the leaders being proud of me and like, oh, Luke, that was awesome the way you did that, man. You really showed maturity there, right? So I'm getting affirmation from those guys. I got some kind of tingly feeling in my tummy.
I think part of that feeling would have been, here's you aligning with who you actually are and who you need to be.
For sure, definitely.
For the first time, rather than the only other times you got respect. You knew deep down that wasn't you, and you were posing, and you didn't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And then now you can get some validation, and you're like, oh, I'm actually doing the right thing.
But I could only do them in those camps though, right?
Yeah.
So then I still had to, when I hang out with my other friends, the toughest thing I could do there was to stand on business and punch on with somebody. Not saying that I won, I most of the time lost, but it's like, but I had to be able to kind of be like, all right, bro, let's do this.
So then you got that clear disconnect.
For sure. So there's two hats happening throughout my adolescence, right? So from like 12 to 18, there's two hats that are kind of happening.
But you started to know that you wanted to be the guy at the camp. You didn't want to be the other guy.
For sure, but there's no way I was going to be able to do that there's no,
in the environment,
somewhere else or something.
Yeah. So how did you get that separation, and when did you end up leaving those guys behind and they went on to what they went on to?
So even though I was at these Christian camps and they were talking about God and stuff, I didn't become a Christian until I was 18. I was soaking up all of this masculinity and all that kind of new affirmation. That was all kind of working for me, but just keep your Jesus, just keep that with you. I'll take all this kind of stuff, right?
You didn't want the story.
Yeah, but just keep your Bible story. It's not really interesting to me, but I'm really liking this other stuff. Like, thank you so much for teaching me how to do relationships, right? Anyway, one of the main guys, he shares his testimony one night and he says, I wanted to kill myself and I didn't feel like I was worth living. And I was working in Phillip Island at a restaurant, and my plan was when I finished my shift, I was going to go across the road to the pub, get as drunk as I could, and then just drive off a cliff. And before I finished my shift, about half an hour of my shift finished, some stranger that was on the table that I was waiting said to me, "Hey man, I'm just going to sound really weird, but I just felt like God wanted me to tell you that he loves you and he wants you to come home." And this guy just started crying, and I remember at the time thinking, this guy was so important to me. He was like a father figure when I didn't have one. He just was teaching me masculinity, but teaching me how to be silly and that kind of stuff. And I just remember thinking, like, he might not have been here if that person didn't stop him. How did that person know to stop him? And that was the first time my mind opened up to the possibility of God's hand being at work in these things. And I was like, oh, nah, bro, got that. And my mom being a really strong atheist, very, very intelligent woman. All right, mom, can God exist? And she's like, nah, because of this, and this. I'm like, well, that's a really good point. So I go back to these camps. I'm like, all right, you Jesus freaks. God can't exist because of this, and this. And they're like, and I do this thing.
You were trying to disprove.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because there's something that's pulling my heart that I can't deny. There's someone that's walking the flesh that's like, he wouldn't have been here had someone not reached out to him and said, man, God loves you, wants you to come home. Because I thought that from my worldview of like, I needed this guy so much. And like, he's here. And because I thought it in my view, I was like, if that guy didn't do that thing 10 years ago, whatever it was, where would I be? What would be happening to me? And I started to see this knock-on effect that like things were happening in different suburbs or states or whatever years before I was born that were kind of like impacting what was happening now. Like I started to like kind of go down that wormhole of like, how did that happen, right? So
God's plan.
Yeah. And so I started going down, but I was kind of like, but it can't though. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like how can God exist because of this, right? Anyway, so I spent maybe like 4 years just grilling them. I was doing apologetics where I was just like, all right, God can't exist because of this. And it's like, no, because of this. So I'm doing this debate.
So it wasn't easy to get you over the line then.
Nah, because I was like, there's
a lot of evidence to the contrary.
There needs to be. Like I wasn't, I wasn't going to believe in any fairy tales just because it made me feel good. And it was making me feel good. Don't get me wrong, I was loving this, but I wasn't going to believe any fairy tales just because it was making me feel good. You can't let your opinions form the facts. The facts have to form your opinions, right? So, and I knew that from a very young age. Like, nah, bro, this is what and I didn't prove scientifically that God existed. But what I did...
That would have been impressive, man.
Right, I got a PowerPoint slide. Yeah. So what I did do is that I got to about 17 and from a scientific perspective thought there's a reasonable probability. I got to the scientific kind of conclusion that that it was more likely from a probability standpoint that this world is created by intelligent design and it wasn't the Big Bang, and that the historical evidence for the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus was more concrete than any other historical figure that we had. And so I then got to the point where I'm like, I don't believe in God, but I no longer think it's a stupid idea. I no longer think you're dumb for believing in God. It's like there's enough evidence to say that there's enough evidence there to kind of say it's a reasonable, logical kind of position to take, right? Now that deals with the head problem, right? But now I've got the heart problem. This is the final bit, right? I'm looking at my life and I'm a screw up. I'm not man enough. I'm not tough enough. I've got ADHD, like diagnosed, not just I did a survey on Facebook or something like that, like a proper diagnosis. I'm struggling in school, you know, like using drugs and my dad doesn't want me and that kind of stuff. And so I was like, man, I started thinking like, if God is real though, like, what's he doing for me? Or like, how does that impact me kind of thing? You know, it's like, and I got to the point that maybe God is real, but he's real like the lottery. Like no one's ever going to call my number. Or he's real, but it's for later. Like when I go to heaven. But what right now, bro? Like I'm living in housing commission. I might walk in on my mom's dead body one day.
And he doesn't love me.
Yeah. I understand why he loves this guy or that guy, that kind of stuff. But anyway, that guy, that leader, Andrew Scarborough, he gives me a CD for these Christian rappers, Lecrae and Tadashi. Because, just for this game, so I thought I was black, right? So watching Menace to Society and stuff, right? So my favorite thing was like hip hop music and all kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So his attitude was like, oh, if anything's going to bring this dude to Jesus, these rappers will, kind of thing, right?
And were you like, I'm not listening to Christian rappers. You're still fighting that? Like,
so I was like, out of respect for him, I chucked it on my iPod, right? So here's the thing. The
beat was hard. They started talking about Jesus. You're like, it's all right, keep going.
So I forgot it was kind of on there. I was on my iPod, whatever it was, or my MP3, whatever it was, right? I remember this one night. I was going to go to a party, hook up with some girls. It was going to be a good night, right? And I've got like Tupac and Biggie playing, and it's just on shuffle, right? And this song comes on called Love Unconditional by Tadashi. And one of the lyrics is, I had no problems believing that he could save my soul. I was having problems believing that he could make me whole. And I remember that moment, it was like, maybe God's real for later, but what about now? And in that moment, it was like, God was like I love you, you're my son. And I remember trying to like reject it. I remember trying to push it off and just being like, but God, you don't want me. Like, I'm a mess. Like, I've been abused and I'm struggling in school and there's so many kids in my class that are smarter than me. Surely you want them. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want me. I'm a mess. And it's like, nah, I want you. Like, I love you. And so I felt like, I just felt like he hugged me and he was like the father that I needed. He was the perfect father that I needed. I just remember just bawling my eyes out. I just feeling that kind of love and just feeling so unworthy of it. But because of his promise and because of his word, he was telling me that I'm so worthy of it. And that, oh man, it was like, man, I don't deserve this. Like, and he's like, no, but you do. Like, I just love you, my child. And so I called up Andrew Scarborough and I was like, dude, whatever this Jesus thing is, man, I want to make it happen. And so I drove to his house. He prayed with me and I just never went back. And I spent, I guess, the first couple of years just kind of like, I don't know, man, just like enjoying life with my new dad and just kind of like, yeah, just I guess rewriting that. And so the head problem was kind of taken care of in terms of like the logical kind of stuff, but there was a massive heart problem there where I was like, dude, I don't deserve this. Like, I'm just not good enough. Like, I'm not the top pick. I'm the bench warmer when it comes to this. I'm the water boy when it comes to this. And the guy's like, nah, man, I want you to be my star player. And I was like, are you sure? And yeah, man, he wanted me and he loved me and I guess there was no requirement. And I think that was the thing, was kind of like, you don't have to do nothing. You know, I think with a lot of religions, it's kind of like, you know, you do this, you get this, you do this, you get that. If you do this and you get nirvana, if you do this and you go to heaven, whatever, it's kind of like, this was just news. It's like, bro, have you heard? Like, I love you, man, just the way you are. Have you heard? Have you heard the good news? Like, you don't have to do nothing. It's like, you know, extra, read all about it. He loves you, bro.
And that was a relief for you because you didn't feel like you were going to pass any criteria.
Bro, I'm telling you now, I'm not passing that test. Do you know what I mean? And he's like, don't worry, my son paid the price. It's like you're walking up to court with a stack of charges and you're just crapping yourself because you know, like, you're about to do a lot of time for this. And then on your way to the courtroom, like, your lawyer runs out. He's like, this guy named Jesus just went up and he just took it all, dude. And it's like, what? It's like, he took it, bro. You don't have to go in the courtroom. You're free. Just go. Live your life, man. It's like, no, but I got these. And you're anxious. I got to face all these charges. Like, nah, dude. And that's what it was. Like, bro, you are loved just the way that you are. And it was like,
you're talking about forgiveness there.
And yeah, and it was like, it was the forgiveness. It was the restoration. It was the value of like, nah, bro. Like,
it's the first time you ever felt worthy.
Come on, that's it. 100%.
You had that moment.
That was the value there, right? It was the value of like, I definitely didn't feel like I was worthy, but it's like, cause yeah, it was like, oh, dude, like the guy that was meant to be my dad was like biologically programmed to love me, didn't really want me. It's like, and you've got no obligation to love me, but yeah, you want to. I've done nothing that's good. I've done nothing that's, do you know what I mean? I've poisoned my body or whatever. I've done nothing that's good. And it's like, why would you want me? Like, are you sure? Have you seen my resume? Do you know the skeletons in my closet? It's like, nah, I love you, man.
But it didn't matter. You're worth it.
Yeah.
You're worth it.
And so then that value, my bro, changed everything. When you find out that you are valuable and worthy and that you have value. Like, when you learn that, and when I say when you learn it, I'm talking about like on a deep level. When your soul, when your heart, like when you learn on a deep level that you are valuable, that you have purpose, like, it just changes everything.
And not just learn, but believe.
Like, you
especially when you had just spent years
of like
looking for a way to not, and then that Christian rap just hit, and then for whatever reason,
look, the rap is now really good, but
that
at the
happened
time,
to be the vessel in that moment where it got through to you.
Yeah, I think there's this verse in the Bible that says, "Marvelous are your works, and all my soul knows this well." And it's like, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, right? So I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and all my soul knows this well. And it's like knowing how intricately and precisely you've been designed. And then, the second part of that verse is, and all my soul knows that well. And that's what I'm talking about. It's about knowing that you're valued, but it's like, and on whatever that kind of means for you, but I just really, if somebody knows on a deeper level that they have that value and that your soul knows that, I think that's transformative. And so that was what significantly changed for me. And then I did a 180.
No doubt. Dude, that was beautifully told just then. That was, Thanks, that was almost a religious experience watching you tell that story. That was a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So you went on to study?
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And how did you get away from the life as well, man?
So what happened was, it was like, I definitely became a little bit, I'll be honest with you, a little bit that annoying Jesus friend.
Preaching.
Look, I've never been a Bible basher. I'll promise you that. I've never been a Bible basher, right? I've never been a Bible basher. But you understand, I'm still kicking it in crack houses. So I'm still kicking with my mates in crack houses. We're still like kicking a mix together, passing the billy around. Obviously, it's missing me when it comes to like when the mix goes around and the bong goes around. I'm like, nah, bro, I'm sweet.
And are they going like, what's going on?
No, they knew. Like, I was like,
But the cognitive dissonance is getting pretty strong at that
So
point.
there's have you seen the movie Menace to Society?
Yeah.
Do you remember there's that Muslim bloke that's like, and he's doing like the black human rights and all that kind of stuff, right?
That was you.
So we watched that movie and they're always joking like, because my nickname was Mendes, like, Mendes, that's you. That's just like the Muslim version of you. Because like, everyone's there like doing gangs, that kind of stuff. It's like, and then he's like trying to like bring up a religious topic. And that's kind of what started happening. So I'm kicking with my mates, and my view, to kind of explain what my position was that I saw the life that we were living like a cancer. And I saw the gospel as the cure to that cancer. And so I was just like, guys, I need you to know, bro, like because I'm watching you rot with cancer. I'm watching you struggle with these like twisted version of masculinity.
You're seeing your friends in pain.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, like, I was in pain like that. I just found the answer. Here it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was like, so that's kind of where it started. And so it was kind of like, I don't think I ever peed them off. I don't think I ever crossed the line. They knew because we did drugs together, because we did crimes together, because we did all that kind of stuff. And so when I'm sitting there sober, I'm trying to tell them about Jesus and that kind of stuff, there was never any hate there. They knew that it came from blood because like Mendes is one of the boys. Like he's been there from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like,
and they knew something significant had happened that had actually changed.
And there was almost like, you know when you've like been slacking off your diet and then you come across your fit friend and you're like, wow, bro, you're like, bro, I gotta hang out with you more. We gotta train. We gotta do a session together. Yeah. I want to come train with you. I want to come eat with you, whatever.
So they had a sense of that you had found something that they could use in their own lives.
Yeah.
But they weren't ready to come.
So every once in a while, like when they were kind of doing low, they're like, bro, I gotta hang out with Mendes. Mendes is doing good stuff, you know? Oh, if I hang out with Mendes, I'll like cut back on the drugs a bit, go kick it with Mendes for a little bit. That was kind of the idea. Like I was kind of like their spiritually fit friend. And they knew like, oh, bro, everyone's, you know, bro, I'm feeling really shit right now. I might go to church with Mendes one time, see how I go. You know, that was the kind of view. I was almost like Boost Juice and they're always like drinking like soft drink. Like, bro, every once in a while, I'll go have a Boost Juice with Luke. Like, it's a little bit of a healthy treat to kind of break up all my toxicity kind of thing. So that's kind of what was going on. I was like their lifeline and I loved it. So I was like their lifeline. Like when things got bad. So one of the things that I did that I think was really helpful for my friends, one of the things I did was making them comfortable talking about stuff and D&Ming in the car, right? So most of the time they're ripped. And so we just kick in the car, they're like, hi. And then they're like, start to talk about stuff. And so I really started to help them, bro, tell me about that. So we started to do like therapeutic things there, which was really, really cool. So that's something that I really helped with. And so I was kind of on call. I was almost like a chaplain to my street friends. Like call Mendes when you need to talk about something. Call Mendes when you need a prayer. He'll give you good luck. Call Mendes when
that like, street confessional going.
Yeah, I was like a street confessional booth, right? So it's kind of like, give Mendes a bell, you know, and so I'll come over and kick it with them in a crack house and that kind of stuff, and we like talk about something. Bro, God loves you, man, and I'll pray for them and that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of the really kind of grassroots of what my life was like. I was like, bro, and this is what was very clear for me. You can never become a Christian. You can become a Muslim. You can stay an atheist. You can do whatever you want. And I said to him, bro, nothing's going to change the way I love you and this lifeline that I have. It's non-conditional. Like, because God's love for me was unconditional. I'm not here to make you a Christian. I'm not here to convert you. I'm just simply here to tell you that you are loved, that you have value. What you want to do with that's up to you. And you can call me at any time of the night and I'll be there and I'll sit with you through that mess. And that's kind of what happened. I became like a chaplain on call that I'll be kicking with my mates and I'll just sit with them when they're feeling suicidal and that kind of stuff. I'll sit with them and that's kind of where it started. This is where kind of like social work and youth work kind of started, because it was like, I just became like a lifeline that they would give me a buzz. Like, bro, I just got arrested.
You found a calling in that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the calling was from day one. I was like, bro, you need to know that you're loved. Like, you need to know there's a different way to do masculinity. You need to, like, there's all these things I wanted to kind of, right? Non-conditional. It was unconditional. It wasn't dependent on, the goal wasn't to make them a Christian. My goal was not to make people Christian. My goal was not to convert people. My goal was simply to communicate hope and value. Now, my view is that the best place for love, hope, and value is found in Jesus, but it's not conditional on that. I'm not trying to get you, I'm just trying to give you love and value and that kind of stuff, right? So that was the position from the beginning. That's never changed. Over the last 14 years, because where am I now? I'm 32, it's about 14, yeah, right. So for the last 14 years, there's just been that's been the grassroots, never changed to today, never changed, same mission, nothing's changed. It's just been this constant growth and reflection and evolution of that model of like, how do I communicate hope and how do I role model positive behaviors? Those are the two things that I'm trying to do. And so that's never changed. And so it was like hang out in crack houses, seeing my friends, visiting them in prison, going to like Barwon or Fulham and all the different prisons around Victoria. Yeah, hang out in crack houses, sitting by the train tracks because somebody wants to jump in front of a train, doing that kind of stuff. And then it's like, my view was like, how do I get better at this? So I just wanted to perfect my craft. So when I went to go study, my study was like, I wasn't going for a qualification. I wasn't like, oh, I need a certificate. I was going for an education. I was like, oh no, dude, I really need to, my friends are dependent, like I'm the only lifeline. They're not going to trust some priest or pastor in a suit. They need me that's like still kicking with them. So like, I need to go out and learn these things to then be able to like pass it on because I'm going to be the only one that's going to trust kind of thing. So that's what kind of led to study. And so I went and studied, I went and did different kind of work, but it was always to just perfect that craft or continue the continual improvement of that mission from the beginning. So nothing's ever changed from day one. It's just been constantly improving that mission. So I went off and I studied. I went to Bible college. I did a bachelor in ministry where I focused on like community development and social justice. I did a diploma in therapeutic life story work, and then I did a certificate in children, youth, and family services. So all the kind of stuff that I was doing was all kind of pointing towards some kind of community development, community services, understanding, learning about trauma, learning about the complexity of our system and our society and how to navigate that. So I think it was like, I don't know, maybe like 8 or 9 years of study total, but it was kind of like, at uni doing this or studying this. And then it's like, and then that night I'm in a crack house and like kicking with those.
Well, and you were still staying in those environments that whole way through.
Yeah. Because
it was always about, they were the people that needed help. Yeah. That was the reason you were doing all of this. And so you were still, you had some real skin in the game. You were like, I could never. You were doing practical a lot.
Yeah, I could never not have a skin in the game. Like it was just no, like, you know what I mean? Like it was never.
But you couldn't save your friends. Not that it was up to you to do that, but.
That's an interesting one. I think it's a very, things that I've learned about trauma and substance dependence and stuff like that. I've learned about the complexities and the deep levels of them and that kind of stuff. And so, like, I don't know if you would say that there's like a green light and red light where it's been on a bit of a spectrum. I've been a part of some of my friends' lives who had a really bad ice addiction and lost everything, lost their kids, lost their wife, lost their house, lost everything, were homeless and that kind of stuff. And I've sat with them at my house. We prayed together, we hugged, we cried, and we went up to like the Dandenong Creek and like threw away his crack pipe and threw away the ice that he had left. You know what I mean? I had moments together like that. You know what I mean? Massive wins. I had moments where I got like, ice dealers to church. I got like some of my friends to church, and I got them like kind of clapping and praising and, you know what I mean, and doing that kind of stuff. I had moments where we got to kind of like get jobs and find houses. Like,
yes,
I learned there's not there isn't always a set and forget thing. I've learned that it's a long journey, and
there are a lot of wins in there, and there was lots of hope and progress. But when you're talking about ice addiction, you're up against the devil there.
Yeah, for sure. I've had some sad stories. I lost I lost a couple of friends to heroin overdose. Like I remember one of my friends I grew up with, he died because of heroin, and you know, I had to go to his funeral and see his mum and that kind of stuff. And I got another friend that like ended up in a psych ward and just had sick, and he was doing so well before that. Like I remember him like being in uni, having a girlfriend, had a Supra, like he was doing really good, and just kind of like just completely fried his brain. He's in a psych ward and that kind of stuff, and just not doing well. And it's like some of my friends homeless, and I had 5 of my closest friends in prisons throughout Victoria. I didn't have one friend from like my upbringing that made it out. And so I'm still connected with them, still plugged in with them. We still have some beautiful moments together. Like I've been able to bring them to church, and I've been able to, we had moments where we like threw crack pipes away and that kind of stuff. But it has been a long kind of, it has been a kind of messy journey. But I think all of that has been, I guess, part of that evolution of kind of perfecting and evolving the theory of change on how, what is the appropriate response to the complex kind of barriers that I guess a lot of people are facing.
And it's a credit to you to still be in touch with those people now and to have not given up on them. And of course you haven't, because that's the whole thing of what happened to you. God, you know, God doesn't give up on them from your beliefs, and that's how you felt about yourself. And so, and therefore you're doing his work here on earth. So, you know, but you also, everyone ultimately is still responsible for themselves. Like,
it was really interesting. I remember so I went back to those camps, and now I go on those camps. I'm one of their speakers. I'll do the Sunday school things that I hated. I'm now one of the.
You run that.
I'm now one of the.
And do you ever have a kid sitting there with like headphones on who thinks he's a gangster?
I've seen so many like little SJ kids, and I'm just like, and I was like, it's actually one of.
You're like, yo, have you done the pastor pool?
No, in all seriousness, dude, it's one of the most beautiful moments that I have with God, because like I'll be up on stage talking about God, sharing the gospel, talking like giving some Bible studies. I'll see one of these SJ kids with his mum bag and his tans and that kind of stuff, and he's really difficult. He doesn't want to be there and that kind of stuff.
And you can say, I was you.
Yeah, no, that's what I had this moment where I feel like God puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, that's exactly what you look like at 12. And I'll just start to cry because I'm like, man, like I'm just so crazy that you saw me. And I guess that was something that I remembered. So I went back to one of these camps, and there's these two guys, this is married couple, Heidi and Brett, and I remember they were the cabin leaders on one of the camp, the camp where I tried to punch on with that guy. And according to the camp policy, I was meant to be sent home. I was meant to be banned from these camps. And I remember I only learned this like 3 years ago, dude. I remember I was talking to her. I was like, oh, I haven't seen you guys for ages. Like, you guys were like camp mum and dad. And I was so happy to see you. And I saw their kids and that kind of stuff. And I was telling them about how I'm doing. And they were just telling me stories. And they were just sharing, like, oh, remember that time this happened? And then like, I remember Heidi told me, she was like, oh, and I remember that time you went to that part of the kid. And apparently the policy was I was meant to be sent home. And then she fought for me to stay on. She's like, no, I really feel like this one's special. And I just cried, because I was like, dude, if I got sent home from that camp, do you know what I mean? Like, if I got sent home from that camp and banned from that camp, like,
that could have been it.
That was my safety. That was my, and she like, I learned 3 years ago. So I learned what? I don't know, bro, like 16 years later, that someone else did something, advocated for me behind closed doors that I didn't know about. That completely changed my life forever. I just cried for, I think, like 2 weeks, bro, of like, once again, I didn't deserve that. Like, I clearly broke the rules. Like, I should have been sent home.
Does that make you emotional now because of the idea of God's hand being at work, or because of the love that woman showed you?
Definitely God's hand being at work, and her obedience to that, to be like, her feeling something in her spirit going, I really feel like I need to advocate in this moment. In the same way that guy that was going to commit suicide, there's that random customer that was just like, you know, because how weird would that have been? You're at a restaurant and then you feel this voice inside your head go, tell that guy that I love him. No, that's going to be weird. People are going to think I'm weird.
And just the impact.
And just going, hey dude, God wants me to tell you they love you. Like, you feel so weird saying that. Like, if we left right now and I went to a cafe and I said, go tell that guy that
you go, yeah, right,
like,
whatever.
You just feel so socially awkward.
Yeah, but if you also, depending on how it's delivered, and you know, the authenticity with which someone says that, and the vibe that you pick up off that, it could have an impact on you or not, as it did with the example you mentioned. Yeah. So you studied for a really long time, and you moved into social work. And then you ended up starting your own business. Talk about Paylos Adventures and how that got a start and what it's turned into.
So I think the easiest way to explain this is that I have never, since becoming a Christian, completely had no plan to ever run a business. I went 180. I had no interest in making money. I had no interest in making money. I had no this capitalist desire, or this rich desire, kind of all just kind of like, I was like, I just turned into the opposite. I turned into this hippie that I was just like, I'm happy to be homeless if I can tell people that God loves them. I'll spend the rest of my life doing that. Like,
you just wanted to spread the word.
Bro, so happy. Kicking it, like.
Were you looking at being a priest?
Nah, I just wanted to tell people about Jesus, and I was like, I guess the rougher and the more uncomfortable it got, the more kind of I was like, yeah, man, this is what it looks like. You know what I mean? Like, so I just hang out in crack houses, but I started doing homeless ministry. So I'm just like kicking at Federation Square in Melbourne. And I would just like sit there with homeless people and be like, dude, can I buy you a sandwich? And tell me about your life. And once again, not Bible bashing, but just like, if it was appropriate, I'm like, man, do you mind if I pray for you? Like, I'm so sorry. Exactly what you just did to me. So you know how you're like, I told you my story and you're like, man, I'm really sorry that happened. It's the exact same thing, right? I was like, man, I'm really sorry that happened to you. And I'd be like, and then I would like buy them a sandwich. I'm going, if you don't mind, I'd love to pray with you and that kind of stuff. And that'll be it. No condition.
But you actually meant it, because
1,000%.
you meant it, because that you'd been there, and that's why
I was so
experience
impacted
is so powerful, because like you, right down to the bones of those feelings and those emotions and that despair, like you had grown up and lived and breathed that for so long, and you're so comfortable around that because that's all you knew. So then you could go and sit in the mud like that with people you didn't know,
1,000%,
and you could and hold that space because of your background.
Yeah. So what that then led to was like, it was just like, man, my heart breaks for you and you don't have to carry that pain. And I just want you to know that. And that's it. What you want to do with that, that's up to you. And that's all I want to do. But I was like, man, I wish I could bring this person home to give them a shower and a hot meal. But I was living in housing commission with my mum. It wasn't fair to bring that. So I got really, really excited and started learning about the property market and real estate thing. And then we got a house. We got a house in Hampton Park. And we had a 4-bedroom house. And then we had about 8 people living there. I had drug addicts and homeless people and family violence victims, that kind of stuff. Couches, bungalows, and we had like a soup kitchen. I saw a need. How do we meet this need, right? So it's kind of like, oh, I'm sitting here like, bro, it'd be really cool if I give this guy a shower, a place to have a shower and a hot meal. How do we give that to somebody, right? So we're doing that. And then I met up with some other guys at my church who were keen to kind of mentor kids, right? And so then we just kind of on the weekends, we were doing like, taking people to do their learners. We were like, inviting them to come play soccer with us. We were inviting them to come to the movies. We were just mentoring and hanging out with kids. It was, kids that we knew from our neighborhood or just new kids that we didn't know. So we just kind of had this kind of stuff going on while working other jobs. And then that kind of led to, I can get paid to do this, because then I started working for like Salvation Army or Beresford. I started doing youth work. So I was able to like, dude, I'm getting paid to do this kind of stuff. And so then the point that I'm trying to make is there was a need of like, this dude needs an older brother the same way I needed an older brother. This dude needs a father figure the same way I needed a father figure. So I had guys at my church that I was connecting with that we were doing that with, and we just kind of did learnings for people and we did like sausage sizzles and fed people. And then I got to the point where I was working in the child protection space and I was volunteering on these camps, but the kids that I was working with that were really complex weren't able to go on these camps because they couldn't deal with 50 kids on a camp. They needed more one-to-one kind of stuff. So where the idea for Paylos came about was I was trying to find a way to give young people who were really complex trauma, criminal offending, all that kind of stuff, regular substance use. How do I give them access to the same experiences that I had on CYC? Because I was reflecting back on like when my friend died, I was reflecting back on my friends being in prison, that kind of stuff. And, really, really grateful for how significantly different my life had turned out. And what was the two kind of crucial components? And the two crucial components that I kind of summarized with in our theory of change is that I had positive role models and I had positive memories. So mentors and memories are the two things that we focus on. And I said to my mum recently when she was really guilty about my upbringing, I said, I really feel like I had a beautiful childhood. I said, despite the abuse and neglect and all that kind of stuff, I feel like my life was beautiful because I swam in a swimming pool full of spaghetti and I went on a flying fox and I sang silly songs around the campfire and I did laser tag that night. And I understood and appreciated the power of play and that positive memory bank to dilute some of the horrible things that happened. So that was one significant component. The second significant component was I had access to positive male role models that I could unpack and navigate my teenage life through or my adolescent life through, and I could kind of figure out these things. And so I concluded with how important those two crucial factors are, and that when I was working in the child protection space, I could give people access to positive role models, but that was limited in those kind of experiences. And so the kids that were similar to me, or maybe a little bit more complex in their behaviors and their presentations, we're going to miss out on those two components, and understanding how crucial they were for the trajectory of my life and trying to replicate that. So once again, this original vision of how do I instill hope and change continued to evolve. And so maybe about 6 years ago, had a very clear kind of mission statement and vision of what we were trying to do, which was to provide mentors and memories. We then wrote policies and procedures, and were able to get, state funding from like child protection to be able to kind of fund us, and that allowed us to quit our jobs and to do this full time. So we're not a religious organization. We're not there to convert people and stuff. Most people don't even know the Christian affiliation with Paylos and stuff, because our only mission that we're very, very clear on is, one, we give you access to positive role models, and two, we're making some really cool memories. And those two components being such crucial components for our young people that we're working with to impact the trajectory of their life. We're not there to fix it. We're not going to change everything, but we now become a stepping stone on their journey to healing. And so we look like an adventure company. Our social media and that kind of stuff very specifically looks like we're just a YouTube company, or we're just like a 4Drive 24/7 or something like that. That's quite intentional, because a lot of the young people that we work with don't want to be associated with child protection, don't want to be associated with needing a service. And people just want to be normal.
But they want to go have a fun day.
Yeah. So we say, all right, dude, do you want to go forward driving? Do you want to go start a fire? Do you want to do whatever it is, right? And while we're doing that, they just feel like they hang out with some mates, but we know that below the surface, some really important theories and frameworks are being put into practice here. We're doing some really good social work stuff. We're doing some really good youth work stuff, because we're providing emotional regulation, rupture and repair. We're doing pro-social engagement. There's all these really cool components that are coming out of that.
And potentially modeling for them for the first time.
1,000%. So now, like, oh, I caught my first fish, such and such got stuck and we had to run the winch, and they've got all these cool memories that fuel their childhood.
Being kids and having fun and forgetting about what might be going on at home.
Yeah.
And then seeing positive role models model masculinity, and then they might have that moment of, oh, maybe I don't have to act hard.
So that's what we do. That's how it's come back, I guess, full circle. Not even full circle. It's kind of like, it's going, so what Paylos is the result of is there's my lived experience of just really living through how important those components are. There's my educational experience of going, this is backed by evidence and theories and frameworks. That's the study that I've done. And there's the work experience. There's me working in the industry, actively being in prisons or in child protection or whatever it is, doing this kind of stuff. And all of those things come together to very clearly say, we understand the power of positive memories, and we understand the power of positive role models. And we do those two things super well.
Wow. Yeah. That is fantastic, man.
Yeah.
That's rock solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that you've got all those elements, and it's also backed up by not only your life experience, but what you've learned, your study, and then bringing together what I'm sure are a lot of other amazing people to be able to offer this. And so now that's dozens of people who work under you. And
dude, so it's been the craziest road. It's definitely its own podcast episode for sure. But right now we've got 2 houses that we use for our kids. We've got the Hampton Park house we're using. We've got like our farm out in Gippsland. So that's a safe space for kids. Like if they're in foster care, whatever it is, and the parents are saying, oh, I can't handle this anymore, send them to Resi. We're like, no. Let them come stay with us for a couple of days. You guys get a break. We'll do some good work. So some really important roles that it's playing there. We've got 2 houses. We've had about 130 people that we've impacted over the last 2 years. So we've been operating for about 2 years properly. And we've got 41 staff members now. So we've got 41 mentors in the team, about 50% male, 50% female, that are supporting people all over Victoria, doing that stuff, man. So it's
incredible, man.
It's really, really cool.
Wow, yeah, to come so far and create something like that. You did it. And you are doing it. Your vision to want to bring this message that you've learned to others and be able to get through to kids who might otherwise not have anyone who can show them another way. And you've actually found a way to not only want to do that, but to actually practically make that happen and give it serious legs and longevity. And it's just would have taken an incredible amount of work and belief and persistence to do that. So just so much respect to you for what you do. That is incredible stuff. And it would be so transformative for so many young people. So well done. What is your message here? There's a lot of stuff there. You've lived a hell of a life, man. It's just an incredible story to sit here and listen to that, and the conviction with which you tell it and the way you're living now and the impact of that is phenomenal. So to tie it all together, what's that message?
So what I like to leave people with is, you hear about just how deep the pain goes and how complex that was, and the brokenness and just how broken it was. And then you hear about, and I was able to go to uni. I worked for the Cambodian government. I worked for Australia, this kind of stuff. We've gone out 41 staff members, and we have impacted over 130 kids. Whatever. So you hear about just how deep it went, just how low it went, and just how high it went. And I think people, you hear that story and think like, oh, what kind of caused that? And I guess what I like to remind people, and the pin that I want to put in my story is to say, my life wasn't saved or changed by a social worker or a child psychologist. It was by some underqualified but very beautiful people who just said that I was worth their time. And so what I really want to leave people with is like, I can't stress enough, like, please don't wait to do your degree in social work or to be a child psychologist before you think you can change someone's life, because my life was changed by these cabin leaders who were volunteers, underqualified, but they were just so beautiful in terms of like, they invited me to do my learners with me. They took me to the movies, kicked the footy with me, taught me how to tie a tie. They weren't social workers. They weren't youth workers. They were just average people that said I was worth their time. And that changed my life forever. And my message to people is like, please don't wait or think you need a degree to kind of pull it off, because you can communicate value to somebody with your time, and that can literally change their life forever, because it did mine.
God's work, man. Thank you.
Oh, good.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.